Welcome everyone to my favorite hour of the week. It's the Old-Timers comic book show with me, joining the machine Hughes. Joining me this week, as always, is the venerable. It is the Professor.
Hey, Johnny, what's going on?
Yay. Dude, nothing going on but the end. Just comic books and crazies, car crazies and comic books. That's what's
Yeah.
going on. There we go. And speaking of crazy, it wouldn't be the same without the El Toro of Comic Crusaders and the UCPN. It is the 13th Crusader.
Moo.
Is that all we get? Moo.
The-
Do not even get El Moo. Oh,
Elmu.
that's like a character from Sesame Street, isn't it? Never mind. Excellent. So this time around, we are talking about everybody's favorite subject. Do we like them? Do we hate them? Retcons.
I would say necessary
Do
in some
necessary.
point. In some
Okay.
points, yeah.
Yeah,
In some
okay.
instances, and in one of the books that we're talking about today, I would say necessary.
Okay.
You have to
Cool.
explain some stuff, right?
Yeah, everyone babysitting comfortably because there's going to be some explaining going on.
Yeah.
Mhm. I think
Third,
it's a break glass in case of emergency tool.
do you think?
Yeah.
I just think sometimes I think it's just used overly much. It's I mean, I'm just looking at DC over the last 10 years or so.
Mhm.
You had continuity, then you had pre-Flashpoint, then Flashpoint, then you had New 52,
Mhm.
then that got rebooted, then you had another soft reboot. It's just there just seems to be like a continuation of this kind of regurgitation of starting over.
Yep. It's like you write yourself into a corner. How do you get out? Up.
Mm,
Let's rewrite.
You
no.
turn around.
Yep. It's like hitting the reset button.
Run, Barry, run.
Well, I know Marvel used to do it all the time back in the Lee and Kirby days, where oh, Doctor Doom dies at the end of the issue. We have to figure out a way to explain how he lived.
Yeah.
That used to be the extent of the retcon, and
Mm,
now it's become really the sweeping, like lots of moving parts, especially with a couple of the books we're talking about. It's like
mm.
you know what you have to change one thing to fix another thing, which breaks
Mm,
another thing that you need to fix then, and then it's a crazy chain.
It's become a running joke in comics. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It really has, where it's like, oh, this character died. Don't worry, they'll be back in a year, maybe even next
yeah,
week.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah.
the X-Men have done it a million times with bringing people back from the dead, and they just retconned the thing last week with the end of X-Men. They net retconned the entire genocide of Genosha.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, the one that always kind of when I think when retcons are done well and done correctly, the one I think of primarily is Jason Todd, who's had more retcons than Hot Dinners. I
Oh yeah.
mean, originally his first origin was like it's a carbon copy of Dick Grayson practically, um, and then he gets retconned out to be some guy who was stealing the hubcaps off the Batmobile. Then when he dies, he gets brought back because Superboy Prime punches reality,
Hmm.
and then that gets retconned until he got dumped in the Lazarus pit. It's
Mhm.
Well, Crisis is the big retcon, though, right? I mean, that Jason Todd fix came out of Crisis, right? And then
the first one for sure.
yeah, and then one of the books we're talking about today definitely came out of Crisis, and Legends, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was post Crisis. They realized other things needed to be fixed, or you bring a big name on a book and you say, "Go ahead, do what you want."
Do you want? Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So
Um, what other retcons have worked? Do you think? Obviously, the ones we're talking about to one side. Any of the ones that we're not talking about kind of work?
that kind of work.
Yeah.
I mean, I look back fondly on Crisis, even though it broke everything.
Mm,
But it, you know, some of those things where it is like, how did the villain live? Those are way easier to digest
Yeah.
than full on, just cutting the cloth. The Hawkman. I think we even did when we did a Redcon
Yeah.
episode before. Hawkman was the big one.
I think
Um,
the Vision was one that we covered between him and the Human Torch. The original android was a good retcon, in my opinion.
Yeah,
that's a good call.
but I think when you break, and then when you end up breaking something because you retconned it, and then you try to fix it, it makes things worse for some reason. The Barry and Wally with the Flash and all that, trying to fix that.
Huntress, Power Girl, and Supergirl. They're the ones that kind of stick in my craw a little bit.
Earth 1 and Earth 2, trying to figure out who's in the JSA, who's in the JLA. What happens when? Are they old? Are they young? Are they? Well,
we're going to get to that in a little while, aren't we? 13th. Any retcons, good or bad, that kind of stick to you? You mentioned the Vision and the android. Any others that kind of spring to mind for yourself?
I would think, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but Captain America, if you think about it, because to carry him over into Marvel, they had to do some minor adjustments. Although some of them may be subtle, but if you really go digging into the books, you will find some differences between
they had
they had no choice. Yeah,
they had to do the 50s Captain America. They had to explain that away, right?
Correct.
And then
come and smash a cap.
yeah. Those were actually, when you look back at it now, that's actually a pretty good retcon. So that's something that doesn't stick in my craw at all, really. So because it kind of takes the whole commie smasher aspect out of it, and kind of puts Steve Rogers back as kind of like a righteous type of liberty, does what he feels is right, as opposed to towing the government line.
That worked. Yeah, like that. I mean, even Captain's origin, getting in the block of ice for Avengers. A minor retcon, all there. Cool. Excellent. Right. So now we've set the scene. We are going to get a little bit complicated. And I hope everyone's sitting comfortably. You have your beers and your alcohol ready. If your kids enjoy your soda pops or whatever. So we're going to go with our first book. We're going to do the first appearance of a character. Then 13 is going to walk us through the the Sitch, the 411, before we get to, I suppose, the book that he's going to focus on predominantly. So let's bring this up and let's get us started. It is this little classic. Is classic the right word for this book?
I would say so.
Yeah, cool. Boom. There we go. It is Tales to Astonish. Where's my number? It's number 44 from May 1963. On eBay, you can get this. There's loads of low grades kicking around in the UK for this book. Low grades are around 3.5 to 4. Normally around the 350, 400 mark. That's pounds. Go Collect, just to put it in context, have a grade 9 at $2,900.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And this is, why is this important, 13? You can take it from there.
Other than the first appearance of the Wasp in a book that it's on my bucket list of books to get. I do not own this. But besides all of that stuff, this is the first appearance of Maria Travailla, who some may not even remember is the first wife of Hank Pym. And she was tragically kidnapped by the KGB right after they got married. They decided to go honeymooning in Hungary. Her and her father were, how would you say, not with the politics of Hungary at the time. So they were kind of outcasts. And he was like, "Hey, you sure we should be here on our honeymoon? Don't worry about it. My last name's not Travoya, it's Pym now." And unfortunately, she was picked up and kidnapped by the KGB, never to be seen again. And then he received a phone call once he contacted the local officials to try to find her, that her body was discovered. That is the extent of what I want to pluck from here, because that's exactly what the writers did years later. They mined it and said, hey, look, I think we missed something here. You know, that tragedy that happened, this is what motivated Hank Pym to become Ant-Man. That's huge, in my opinion.
Or
So,
small, depends on how big he is at the time.
correct. But then you move forward into the future in West Coast Avengers 33, which I'll briefly touch on.
Please
Hank
do.
Pym learns that she's still alive. Now, this is now at this point in time, you go from 1963 to the late 80s, and
88, in fact, I think you'll find.
correct. And so you're going that whole entire time, more than 20 years. For those that even remember from the 60s that Hank was even married, what happened in between then? Hank Pym went through many personas: Ant-Man, Giant Man, Goliath. He got married to the Wasp, and all that goes away.
Mhm.
All that goes away. So, because now he learns she's alive. So now you kick it over to West Coast Avengers 36. So I'll pause for Machine to give the credits.
Thank you. So West Coast Avengers number 36 from September 88. eBay will cost you the princely sum of £3.50. It's a low cost book on this one. Go collect, go fish on this one. Go collect, do not have a price for it.
It's priceless.
Written by Steve Englehart, layouts by the classic Al Milgram, finishes by Mike Lachlan. Bill Oakley is on letters, and Paul Beacon is on the colours. There you go. I've never understood the attraction of the West Coast Avengers. I don't.
That's your problem.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, easy, Tigers. Whoa.
I'm
Easy.
El Toro today.
It'll be easy, Tigra.
Yeah, well, yeah, don't get your stripy pajamas in a twist, for Christ's sakes. All right, so what's Kalachan on the West Coast Avengers?
Yeah, so as I mentioned moments ago, that in West Coast Avengers 33, Hank Pym, a original member of the Avengers, learns that his first wife is alive, and he is desperate to find out, where is she? Is this thing for real? What's going on? But in true Marvel fashion during this time, it's not an easy journey just to get to that thing of, hey, let's just go find her. They go through a gauntlet of adventures, drama, internal drama, villains, and things like that, just to get to this point in this issue where he finally actually sees her. And this is it. I don't know. I was literally digging around for this like a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, no way. But, Ant-Man, if you think about it, in the 60s was a pretty big character. I mean, he was an original member of the Avengers.
Yep.
And then, to have like that little detail from Tales to Astonish 44 get all of this, I thought it was actually a very clever mining thing to kind of retcon and bring back the first wife. What makes this more interesting with this issue, Steve Englehart, Al Milgram, I love them both. So to me, that was a pleasant treat. But at the time, I was a fan of the West Coast Avengers. I was reading this run, collecting, and yeah, well, I always liked their adventures, and in here, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck story wise. It's a lot of moving pieces here that you have to keep track of. Other than Hank Pym finding his first wife, you have the marriage of Clint Barton and Bobby Morse kind of dissolving now within this issue, Hawkeye and Mockingbird. And that was very, very huge for West Coast Avengers. I mean, they were there kind of at the beginning to form this version of the Avengers team. So this is falling apart. Hank Pym seems to be going crazy. Again, his desperation. Moon Knight joins the team. There's a lot of things going on here, but all in all, towards the end of the book, Hank realized, he finds Maria alive but mutated. So now the retcon is that when she was kidnapped, she was mutated into what you see here, and this was a lot for Hank Pym to take in. And then the explanations come in like, okay, yeah, are you sure it's you? It is. And then this happened to me. I was kidnapped and I was mutated. They're trying to do something to me and things like that. And, you know, not only is he astonished, no pun intended, but he wants to try to help her get out of this situation. So you see him pretty much go to any lengths to tell the team, like, listen, like, you guys just let me do what I got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the craziest statements that came out of this book was from the Wasp. Like, I guess we were never really married since Maria was alive. That statement alone kind of erases everything that
Mm-hmm.
that they went through, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and that's huge in itself because these two held their own for comics for a while, and then obviously original members of the Avengers. But that's okay. We're still cool. You good luck. Good luck, Hank. Don't worry about it. And and again, in the very last page of the book, um, they're kind of all happy for Hank that, you know, in a way, if it's weird. But then, you know, you have Mockingbird saying, hey, you know, this is great and everything, but Hawkeye and I are going to split up. But then there's more. So for those that are interested in kind of following the history of Maria, you can go to Solo Avengers a year later, where she was further mutated, and then further mutated still a year after that in the pages of Quasar into Modam, literally a female version of MODOK. So when I was looking at this, I was like, man, what? That is like one of the most tragic stories that I've ever heard for a character. Like, she's been through the ringer. And I'm like, wow, you know, but what has it done for Ant-Man?
Yeah, that's true. True that.
You know, so I just wanted to highlight like this retcon, right? They plucked the few panels from Tales to Astonish 44 and did all of this with this character. So there may be people out there that don't even know who Modam is, or she was also known as Sodam, if I'm pronouncing it right. But or when you're here at this point in time, right? I was a young kid reading this, and I'm like, I don't know who she is. I didn't know. He was married before. I was always Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now that's all gone. Now as an adult, I understand what they did, but when I was reading this at a young age, I'm like, what is going on here?
No, it's all a bug's life. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
Interesting. Thank you for the recap. This is what I mean when we talk about retcons. We have to know the original story before we understand the new story, so we can understand the differences. I guess. Cool.
That's right.
So that's what makes comic books so fun when they're done correctly. Other times they're done so poorly that you can't wait to retcon everything back.
Yeah.
But that's a different.
This was totally a rabbit hole machine because I'm like, what the hell's going on? I'm like, oh man, let me go to the past. Then I went to the future. That's the advantage we have now. So it's a total rabbit hole with just one character you probably never think of.
It's interesting how retcons can affect, I suppose, the collectability of a book as well. You know, if there's something going on that's not particularly well liked, that book's going to languish in a 10-cent bin, as opposed to something that was really popular that it's going to, you know, get legs, as it were. Professor, you kind of drew me some shade when I said I didn't understand what the fuss was with West Coast Avengers. I realized when I said that, of course, Wonder Man's one of your dudes. He's on your list of favorite characters, and you love Hawkeye and stuff. So I apologize, but I've never understood the attraction.
So West Coast Avengers, when I was a kid, was like the first comic book I collected from an issue 1, and fell in love with all the characters. And over the years, it has just turned into the fun Avengers team. When you look back on the mid 80s, late 80s, I thought all the characters were more fun than the actual team that they were putting out Avengers. And a lot of the stories I thought were more fun too. And I thought you had a classic Avengers writer in Steve Englehart,
Mm-hmm.
followed up by Roy Thomas, the one of the original writers on Avengers, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of the stories were kind of really baked in history like this, and that's what, like, I was just thinking while 13 was talking, Steve Englehart and Roy Thomas, really the kings of the retcon, right? I mean, they really took some old school, even pre Marvel stories, and just kind of wove out a whole cloth the like new directions, new stories to go. Englehart was the one that come up with the origin for the Vision, like 13 was talking about earlier.
Mhm.
The whole he was the original Human Torch android body, and that was a huge retcon. Um, and then this whole thing, I actually love this story simply because it really took that Tales of Astonish comic from 20 or 30 years earlier, and brought back a lot of these characters that really, I was kind of like, wow, this is kind of a hokey character. The voice, that's a really weird ass character to be kind of reading about. But he made one appearance previously in a Tales to Astonish issue a bazillion years earlier. And that's really where like these weird ass characters are coming from, because they're throwbacks to the 60s. And even in the 80s they were dated, and even now you read them now, you're like, Jesus. But I loved that Englehart did a lot with Hank in his West Coast Avengers run. Not so much a lot to fix his character, but to kind of make him readable. I remember, I think I talked to Steve Englehart a long time ago about that. He didn't really even like Hank Pym. He just he wanted to make him like fun, which is why he did more with him. If he didn't
All
like
right.
the character, I actually thought that this iteration of Hank, the Dr. Pym character, where he was actually shrinking and growing other things other than himself, I thought this was kind of a lost opportunity. They didn't really do a lot with it. I loved the fact that he had his little rover uh, rover kind of car that that was kind of like a primitive Ultron intelligence, which I thought was kind of fun, which they never really did anything with. But I love, that's one of my favorite panels of all time. That not really, but I mean the him holding all of his little things. I love that stuff. And I'm like, I've never seen him use half that stuff.
Is that what you feel like when you get all these little bits and bobs out of your action figure sets? Is that what you do? You
Yeah.
hold them in your hand and think, I am Dr. Pym.
The Lego set.
I think it's cool. I think they never really did enough with him in this kind of aspect of his personality.
Although
So
they did take it forward in the movies, of course.
oh yeah, they did.
Mhm.
And of course this was right before they did a kind of roster shakeup here in West Coast Avengers. With John Byrne coming on the book within months of this. So this is Englehart's last story for West Coast, and I thought he kind of went out with a bang. I actually had to go back and read this book like 10 or 20 years later with more of a knowledge of Marvel history to actually fully enjoy this book.
Okay. I was a little bit lost. I read the first Tales to Astonish book. I read that and I thought, okay, I'm kind of with it. I know what's going on. I didn't understand some of this, which up here, Pym's thinking being an Avenger is such a rare privilege. And then as it says here in the bubble, Hawkeye couldn't agree more. And yet he's not even thinking that. Oh, he's thinking completely something different. It's like there seems to be a disconnect somewhere. I'm like, what? So he's saying, blast it. I know I'll play the game a lot longer. And, broke a strict rule. I'm like, what? And then the thought panels seem to, I don't know, the page break, the panel breaks don't help the conversation or the thought conversation there at all.
It's assuming you've read the previous few issues.
Yeah, which is fine. And some of the art was all that didn't work. I thought Wonder Man he's just too bulky and just not,
Chest heavy.
Well, he's something, isn't he? He's like the Hulk. I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on there.
You had Quicksilver as a villain in this one too.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
I didn't think it looks like they're splitting up there, the gang, but then they turn around and she bops him. I don't. I was like, I don't understand how that happened. Maybe it's just me reading too much into it. I don't know. But some of the Kirby-esque backgrounds were fun to look at. The story on the whole, I can see why it's all, it's all Marvel melodrama at its best, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we love Marvel for, all the melodrama.
If I could make an Al Milgrom comment here, I do love Al Milgrom, but I'm very fond of his Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man artwork.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't think a team book is his forte. And I just read. Sorry.
A lot of moving pieces here.
Too many, perhaps. And we've got to say, before everyone starts hurling abuse at us, we love Al Milgrom. We think he's great. We've talked about how fantastic he's been in the past. I will point out that Al Milgrom only did the layouts for this book, and it was Mike Macklin who came in and did the finishes thereafter. So if you want to see, I suppose, how layouts and finishes or pencils and inks can affect a book, looking at something like this is a great way of doing that. So so I'm not hurling abuse at Al Milgrom in any shape, way, or form. I love his Spider-Man stuff for sure. And some of the stuff here works really well, but then some of the other characters just don't work so well. But no, I'm not a huge West Coast Avengers fan. That book didn't help me with that. So thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
What are friends for?
Yeah. All right. On that note, time for a break for one of our other shows before we get into our next Retcon revelry. I recently bought the new McFarlane Batgirl from the Batman animated series, so I guess we're talking figures. It's gotta be time for a crisis. There you have it, Crisis in the Toyverse. I lost the poll. Apparently, you're supposed to take the figures out of the box. Who knew? Who knew? Mine ain't coming out of that box. All right, next up is the Professor's choice. And the Professor went surprising for you, Professor. I didn't expect this. You went up and away with a Legion of Superheroes and Superboy. So this is, we've got a couple of Legion books to look at. Well, I'll go through the stats. Legion of Superheroes 37 and 38. Obviously, July 87 and August, respectively. eBay has number 37 at $12 to £15. Go Collect has it for $30. Couldn't find 38 on eBay, but Go Collect has it at $29 on that. Both are written by Paul Levitz, who I think is probably up there with the Roy Thomases of the world for retcons and stuff. Greg LaRocque and Mike DiCarlo are on art, with ink assists by Arn Starr, and John Costanza, the classic letterer of DC of old, is on Hands for Letters. So, one down. Let's get ready. Let's have at it. What's going on in Superboy that needs a retcon?
Well, this is actually what's coming out of Legends back in 1986 or 1987, right?
Right.
post Legend. So here's a big story. This is the biggest news that's come out of DC in 1986. John Byrne jumps ship from Marvel to DC, and they give him the keys to the castle for Superman, and they say, do what you want to do. So of course what John Byrne does, it brings him back to square one and comes out with the 6-issue Man of Steel limited series, which basically is a retelling or updating of Superman's origin for the 80s crowd, right? So unfortunately, what happened to all the rest of the continuity, right? I mean, we thought Superman comes out of Crisis and he's okay, and then the next year it's a full-on reboot, right?
Right.
So
A super reboot.
A super reboot, right? So
Kryptonite.
So basically, we're staring in the face of this new John Byrne origin story. The Silver Age basically never happened, right?
Right.
I mean, and not only was Superman never ever Superboy in this iteration, there's no such thing as kryptonite or other colors other than green. There's no red, no gold, no whatever, right?
Black.
So yeah, no black kryptonite. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on, and what Mara and Pa Kent are still kicking in this new universe, with no the Superboy never lost his parents. So it was really interesting, and John Byrne addressed this actually really early in his Superman run, with the Legion of Superheroes, because that broke the fact that there was no Superboy broke the Legion of Superheroes, right? Because that was their whole reason for existence, was because they were inspired by the existence of Superboy to create their own teen club 1,000 years in the future. And now with these Legion of Superheroes, they still remember Superboy. When you're reading it, they're like, hey, talking about Superboy. So now what? Right?
Yeah.
They have to fix it. So how do you fix it? So, and I'm basically just going to kind of boil down the plot here. I'm not going to
go for it.
Really. So basically what happens is the Time Trapper, who is the villain of the piece, realizes this because he went back in time to find Superboy, couldn't find him, right? Finds out that there was something going on, whatever crisis never actually reached him, that this now Superman that lives in this universe has never been Superboy. So Time Trapper looks at this as an opportunity and basically goes back in time and finds that little pocket universe and plucks it out of existence. I guess that's what happened. And puts it in its own little pocket universe. So basically Superboy's little universe here, where he is Superboy and inspires the Legion of Superheroes, still exists in this time frame, but not in, so basically the whole, I know it's tough to keep a scorecard here. Crisis eliminated all previous storylines, right?
Right.
All previous alternate universes. Except now there's a new alternate universe, right?
Oh my god! Oh man, it's killing me.
Is that right?
It's killing me.
So
at the start of the show, a bit off camera, I was saying to the professor, I'm having a really bad weekend, and I've got some stuff, like, it's not life-threatening stuff, it's just life stuff. And now he's come up with this Crisis Legends. I was like, oh my god, I wish my weekend was in a little pocket universe.
Hey, Machine, and we like DC.
Yeah, I know.
But to explain it away now, so Superman, who appears in the second and third part of this crossover, he's still never been Superboy. He has a confrontation with this Superboy, who is now working for the Time Trapper, right? And has captured several members of the Legion of Superheroes and has been instructed to kill them in order to keep his universe intact. And you know, throughout this storyline, Superboy is actually a bad guy, right? And he's gonna kill the Legion to save the rest of the people that he loves in Smallville.
Superboy is a bad guy. This is a thought that lingers because he's the prime motivator in Infinite Crisis. Is it Infinite Crisis? Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Final Crisis. Right?
Yeah.
That's actually not him. That's actually not this
Correct.
Superboy, though.
That's a different Superboy,
It's
but
a
the idea
different
of
Superboy Prime.
but
And
Superboy being a bad guy is, as an idea, sticks around. Maybe not
Yes.
this version of Superboy, but in
in this iteration, at the end of this storyline, Superboy realizes that, you know, what he would have to do to appease the Time Trapper would be to kill the Legion. Decides he's not going to do that and sacrifices himself in order to save the Legion. And so this storyline actually ends with the Silver Age Superboy dying. So he's dead. Hence, you don't really have to explain him anymore after that, right? So the fix on this was that all of the Silver Age Superboy stuff happened in this pocket universe. So all the inspiration that the Legion got for Superboy was from here, but then this particular Superboy, who was never the Superman that John Byrne was writing, sacrifices himself to save the Legion of Superheroes. So, and then of course becomes even more of an inspiration at the end, correct?
Wow.
Right. Very.
Oh my God.
Hey, a retcon's a retcon, right?
Yeah, I suppose when you do it right, you gotta do it right. 13th, I seem to remember that you are a huge Legion fan.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the Legion you love so much, or is it the Silver Age stuff that has just pretty much been wiped out of existence?
Well, it depends. Which continuity are you talking about, Machine?
I see. Here we go. This is it. So, someone had to say the C word. Oh my God.
No, I say that in jest, of course, because first off, Paul Levitz is an unsung hero.
Agreed.
Because anytime any changes happen in regular continuity at that time affects the future for the Legion. And how do you come up with these stories? Not only that, how do you handle so many characters, personalities, powers, keeping it all together? It's as if you need a checklist to make sure, oh yeah, this guy does that, or this girl does that.
Could you argue that Paul Levitz is the DC version of Mark Grunwald?
Yes.
I'd buy that. I'd buy that because it's not easy to keep this together. And I'll tell you this right off the bat, the way the professor explained this whole circle of Superboy is perfect, because that's exactly what it is. It's absolutely perfect because it is very confusing. And if you're not with it, you're going to get lost very, very fast. And you may even not notice other things. So anytime, like I said, anytime there's something significant happening in the regular continuity, as was Crisis, what does that do for the Legion and everything that they've been through? Because they're from the future, they should know everything that's happened in the past.
Yep.
But the problem with Legion is that with these crises or events or things like that, now you kind of have to automatically retcon the Legion. And here is a major retcon with a major player in Superboy. And I think, like, wow, how did Paul Levitz come up with this? Like, or who came up with it? You know, so this is the pocket universe, a remnant, if you will, of pre-crisis, but not the pre-crisis Superboy. Man, that's I don't know how you come up with that and then do all of this and still explain it throughout the story to make it make sense, and then send him off in heroic fashion to save his pocket universe. He was at the bidding of the Time Trapper. I guess that was where the real brilliance to me took place, because you're using a character and a big villain for the Legion to pull this off. So, you know what I mean?
and I wanted to mention one more thing about the Time Trapper, because I thought he was such a fascinating villain to use, because in this storyline you realize that basically anytime the Legion has ever used their time bubble to go to any time and place, the Time Trapper was controlling that. Time Trapper was controlling which reality they went to and which universe. Like if when they went back to the modern age Superman, or the John Byrne Superman, the Time Trapper made him go there. You know, when they were going to the Pocket Universe, the Time Trapper made him go to the Pocket Universe.
The Time Trapper to me is that guy way back in the days at a railroad station pulling the lever to switch the tracks.
Yep.
And that's exactly what he did here.
I have a question.
Very deceptive. Very deceptive.
So, the Legion go back in time to John Byrne's Superman. And yeah, is that right? And then he's freezing them. So, and all that. So, if the Legion had traveled to the Pocket Universe, how does Pete Ross know who they are?
Because when they had originally gone back in time, back in the late 50s or early 60s, that was that's the retcon, right? The Time Trapper was sending them to that Superboy Pocket Universe.
Oh, okay.
And Pete and they had those adventures, and Pete Ross discovered who Superboy was and who the Legion was, and became a member of the Legion too. But that was everything happened in that little Pocket Universe and not in the DC universe proper, if you can, as explained. So
yeah, it was decades of deception by the Time Trapper.
Yes,
decades. We can agree that when it comes to code names, calling the blonde with the boots Dream Girl was an absolute spot on name. Well done.
Yeah, I want to mention something here too. So one of the scenes with Superboy being in a casket.
Let me get back. Let me get back there. I'm fine.
It's very symbolic for a lot of reasons, because it's closing a chapter, if you will, with all of those Superboy and a Legion of Superhero adventures and things like that. But then you're like, well, that really happened, but now they're saying this is different post-crisis. You're talking about a pre-crisis thing and a deception that happened post-crisis to make it seem like a pre-crisis thing, if that makes sense. But one of the things that's inconsistent is the Supergirl statue in the back, because she was in crisis. She was wiped out from continuity.
Oh, my head hurts.
So I was like, wait a minute now. Maybe there's another thing that wasn't explained here, but this the problem with Legion, like I said earlier.
Well, here's the thing. So everything that existed in that Silver Age Pocket Universe for Superboy, that means that Supergirl existed in that Pocket Universe too.
Right. So they honored her here.
Yeah. That explains that. I mean, it explains it. I don't know how it explains it well, but because they never touched it. They never mentioned Supergirl in this story at all. But she's in there as a statue, and that would be why like 13 would think, well, what happened with Supergirl if this all happened with Superboy? So yeah, I get it 100%. So,
but which universe is she from?
Good question.
That's where I'm saying, like, so if we're talking about a Pocket Universe, this Supergirl was not from the Pocket Universe, or so we.
Well, that's what Time Trapper explains in the first part of this Legion of Superhero story, that when he took this Pocket Universe, he also took the Krypton part. So he took Krypton and Earth, and so those two places existed in his Pocket Universe. So that would explain the reason why Supergirl was able to.
So, are we saying then that in the Pocket Universe, the Earth in the Pocket Universe has the same characters as the our DC normal Earth? Because that would mean any interactions that the Legion had in the past with Superboy on Earth, I'm sure. For example, I'm sure there's a Brave and the Bold Batman and the Legion of Superheroes issue. I'm sure there is. There must be more than at least one, in fact. Does that mean that Batman isn't our Batman, but the Batman of the Pocket Universe.
Well, it depends. If it happens before Crisis, then it was legit. They were
What?
within the same time stream. This disruption was after the Crisis.
But the deception. But
Yes, the deception.
I thought the idea was that the time trapper was always sending Legion back to the.
But remember that.
After the John Byrne Superman.
But Crisis affected some. Again, this is the conundrum when you have an event like Crisis where you're doing a major reset. But what does that do for heroes that supposedly know everything that happened in the past? Now, this is what prompted so many reboots of the Legion.
Yep.
I hate thoughts.
It is, because you run into characters like enigmatic characters like the Spectre or Dr. Fate, or it's like characters that have that historical knowledge, and you're just like, what the heck?
Yeah, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
I have seen the universe reborn and died and reborn.
Right.
Something along those.
And the only simple way to explain it away is exactly what happened. A pocket universe, alternate dimension, another reality, whatever you want to call it. Earth
or drink
4000 or whatever.
Or drink. Yeah. Every time there's a pocket universe, drink.
Great.
But hey, the art's great.
Yes, the art is great. I was in the first one we looked at 37. I have no idea why she's naked on a bed of stars. I'm like, what is going on? 80s gratuitous art in full effect. But hey ho. Talking about gratuitous.
See,
way fishnets are back. Woo! Yay! So this is my. I suppose this is my coin flip into retcons. Every time I think about retcon, I think of the Black Canary because she had it tough in lots of different ways. So we're looking at Justice League of America number 75 from November 69. You can get this on eBay at various grades at between £50 and £75. A grade 9 on Go Collect, $525. Written by Denny O'Neil with Dick Dillon on art. Joe, I'm going to say Gila. I don't know, there's a hard G, soft G, whatever, is on inks, and John Costanza is on our letters. Now, when we talk about Black Canary retcon, let's just give some context to this before we look at the book. Admittedly, the book doesn't have a lot of the continuity stuff that we're going to talk about. So Black Canary was originally who? 13?
Dinah Lance.
Yeah, and she ends up marrying some bloke, has a daughter. Dinah is the Justice Society's Black Canary, correct?
Yep.
At which point they've discovered that the child they have has a sonic cry that breaks stuff and hurts people. So they put the child in some sort of time stasis where she still grows up, but she's not learned anything. And then sooner or later, when Justice Society Black Canary transports to Justice League Earth, somewhere along the line, they swap her brain into young Canary, and then has the affair with Green Arrow and stuff like that. So that's one retcon. Well, that's one way of getting rid of Black Canary in two things. So there's one retcon. Yeah. Second retcon is after the parents get killed, she ends up becoming a fighter. She ends up becoming the Black Canary that we know of her now. Man, I tell you, this is an absolute head mash because there's just so many different things going on. All right. So why would you take a character like Black Canary, who admittedly has a following, but it's very specific? Why would they have to go through all this trouble? Because I mean, it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there. Let's see. In the post-crisis Canary, her parents died, and the legacy of the original Black Canary was passed on to our Black Canary. She then trained with the Justice Society of America when they came out of their crisis issue. She's been retconned in New 52. She's been retconned as a rock singer. There is just not one definitive, this is the Black Canary, this is the Diana Lance or Laura Lance or whatever you want to call her, that exists. Even to the point where in Birds of Prey, she gets dunked in the Lazarus pit because she's dating Ra's al Ghul, and she gets a canary cry back, which is great. But the hair doesn't turn black; it stays blonde. But we all know that it's not blonde's not a natural color. You know, yeah. So it's just an absolute it's tinkering with stuff that makes no sense. The age mind swap thing is just not doesn't work well. Obviously, it worked for a period, but there you go. So it's kind of I'm sorry I'm not as erudite as the professor when it comes to explain what's going on, but to be fair, it's a whole batch of crazy. Why would people think it's a good idea to swap out an older brain character and stick her in a young girl's body just for the sheer fact of it, and then goes and have a romantic liaison with Green Arrow? I have no idea. Fine. As for the book itself, this is some of it looks cool, some of it doesn't look cool. It's of its time for sure. It was a hard slog to go through the book for me. And I'm a DC fan, but it is what it is. I suppose it's, as I say, it's of its time. Explains certain things. We get to see Canary a lot of. She joins the team. Great job's a good one. 13. Help me out.
Well, it looks as if they had you in mind, Machine, because who else would wear fishnets? So they're like, hey, in the future, we have to take care of the Machine. Perhaps a collusion with the Time Trapper. Who knows? I do own this book, and the significance of this book for collectors is exactly what Machine mentioned. This is, in essence, your first appearance of the new Black Canary, which would explain the value of it. And I guess that's what people go with. But as far as digging into the character's history, it is yet another rabbit hole, as we said earlier, that to put all this together, it's mind-numbing. It's a mind-numbing adventure and a big task. It's not easy. I think in Justice League of America 220 or 220 something, I think you get a better explanation there about what's happened to Black Canary than you would in this book.
Agreed.
But to anybody living at this time, picking up this issue, it's like, oh, it's Black Canary, and you're just getting a story of them in a typical adventure, fighting evil versions of themselves. You have no idea what's going on other than Black Canary's acting a little different. I wonder. Oh well, that's it. You're not getting an explanation like what you're getting in the previous books that we covered, especially Legion, within the script. So this is, again, it's not easy to piece together, and good luck. Good luck.
She's a popular character. Birds of Prey. She led the Justice League of America for a while, and the Dwayne McDuffie, Ed Baines run, looking gorgeous throughout.
Yeah, she's a great character, but again, it's you got to factor in the time and who are the creators involved. Why do you want to have her involved? And then that in itself can be like, well, you know what? I've always pictured this character like this, or maybe having her in a relationship like this. Powers, otherwise no powers. Some writers have said, okay, I love talking about Earth 1 and Earth 2, and then that brings up the whole debacle of mother and daughter, or mother and sister, because that's another thing that's happened. So it depends on who's handling her and when and for what context. Solo adventure or team setting. And that's the problem with Black Canary. Great character. It's just which version do you like? And unfortunately, that's what's posed to many collectors and readers.
Mm. It's tricky because it's unless you really love the character, you're not going to go through all the trials and tribulations with them. You're just going to stick to what you like. Professor, are you a Canary fan?
Not really, but I have a couple of questions. Uh,
Okay.
so I would well, actually, one's a statement and then one's a question.
All right.
So I really wish that either Julius Schwartz or Denny O'Neil were still here, so I could ask them when they were writing or when they were, we know Julius Schwartz was the driving force behind a lot of these DC titles back in the day.
Yeah.
I'm suspecting they weren't very concerned about, 50 years later, people like us questioning the continuity of
Yeah.
some of these books. I think that what they did was they were writing for entertainment. They were writing for the 8 to 12-year-olds that were reading these books.
Yeah.
And who really gives a crap what happened to Black Canary prior to this? They
Yeah.
just wanted to get her onto the team,
Right.
and they just
Yeah.
kind of whether or not it made sense. Of course, we can look at it back then, and of course later on, other writers are like, "Well, how can I fix this? I loved this story back when I
Yeah.
was a kid. How can I get this to fit better or explain
Mm.
it better than it was actually explained at the time?" So to me, stories like this really kind of they exist in a vacuum where it's that one issue of time, especially a lot of these DC books, because the Silver Age books really kind of there's no continuity from one book to the next. You're reading that one issue self-contained story, especially if you're reading these old Silver Age Supermans or Batmans with Rainbow Batman or Red Kryptonite Superman or whatever. Like a lot of these issues, they didn't.
Oh, easy there. Not everybody's all like into Spider-Man's life, Easy, Tiger.
No, but I'm just saying a lot of
You're
these.
right, though.
We all look back on these stories fondly. I think for the most part, but a
Yeah.
lot of them they really had nothing in common with continuity or anything, and it's left to the writers 10 or 15 years later to actually try to make sense of all this stuff. So I think I thought that this was interesting, and this is why I think this is why retcons exist, really, right? To try to fix all this stuff that you see that's coming up wrong. The other thing that I was gonna now post Crisis, wasn't Black Canary a founding member of the Justice League instead of Wonder Woman?
That's correct.
Yes.
So that's that was another thing, and that's actually the kind of retcon I thought you were going for, as opposed to this.
I was just going for the whole. When it comes to Canary,
Earth 2 to Earth 1 Black Canary.
Yeah.
The mother to the daughter, and then there's a further retcon down the road where she's just the founding member of the Justice League, and no,
I've got that
Wonder
somewhere.
Woman's not.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty interesting as well. Good luck trying to explain that.
Right. So next time someone suggests retcons,
oops.
Yeah.
Let me
set my out of office now for that conversation.
There are so many retcons that are super confusing that are just not even in our timeline yet.
Right.
True.
We
haven't even talked about Catwoman. Batgirl.
The
Batgirl
Peter and Mary Jane marriage.
Is Batgirl Jim Gordon's niece or is it a daughter? Which one is it? Catwoman.
I still don't know that.
Was she a prostitute or was she a jewel thief? Which one was she?
Yeah, now I'm looking forward to the Gwen Stacy Norman Osborn conversation.
Oh yeah, yep.
Well, you can
we're probably 5 or 10 years away from that.
It's funny because we haven't talked about the Gwen Stacy one. There is a Gwen Stacy retcon in our remit, The Evolutionary Wars. Gwen Stacy from the Spider-Man annual with art by Mark Bagley.
And I will admit, I deliberately omitted that.
Really? Man, I wish I'd thought of that at the time.
Yeah.
Yes, well, bless. Does she get turned into someone called Joyce or Joan or something at the end of it? Crazy.
Where's the time trapper when you need him?
All right, there you have it. A retcon of ages for all the ages. Oh my god. Professor 13, thank you for joining me again.
Of course, it was a pleasure getting this headache that I now have.
Yeah.
Nowhere else I'd rather be.
Timey-wimey stuff, just ooh, man. Don't forget to check out UCPM for all your favorite shows, including 13th.
The Definitive Crusade, where you can stay up to date on all the recent DC releases.
Okay. Professor, no prizes on a bit of a break right now, but
We're in the process of retooling. So
there we go. Excellent. And of course, if you want to talk to creators about their own stances when it comes to retcon and their stuff, don't forget to check out Outside the Panels, your one-stop shop for interviews with writers, artists, and the like. Gentlemen, as always, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
Professor's dying.
sorry about that, guys.
Bad transmitter. All right, okay. I've been your host, John Machine Hughes. As always, adios.